Okay, if everybody can take their seats, we're going to start the finance meeting. Good evening. Welcome to a special finance meeting for Monday, August the 10th, 2020 in council chambers at 6:30. We have one item on the agenda. Is the matter of utilizing the CARES Act for those funds, an ordinance authorizing the use of coronavirus aid relief and economic security funding to cover the costs incurred due to the COVID-19 public health emergency of the city. Emergency clause is requested. Can I get a motion and get it on the floor? So moved. Moved by Mr. Gillette, second by Ms. Davis. So we had discussion last week in regards to this. There was the Elyria Community Court came over and they had given the Finance Committee some information regarding some of their concerns that they're dealing with over at the courts. So this is where we're at here today to have more discussion in regards to that and some follow-up. So with that being said, if the mayor wants to weigh into, or if Director Brubaker wants to kind of have those conversations as far as where we're at with the Elyria Community Court and those conversations, and I'll let Judge Bennett speak to that. Mayor?
Through you. Thank you for the opportunity. Yeah, after last Monday's meeting, as I mentioned, we were going to meet with Muni Court and got a chance to sit down with Judge Bennett and dispel any myths about our partnership. And I'm just excited to be collaborating with Muni Court, as it should be, working together for the betterment of the city. And Director Brubaker can speak to some of the details of the team that we sent over, and I'd love to hear from Judge Bennett as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the members of the committee. I know that the judges met with Mr. Rothgary from our IT department. He met with Mr. Showalter and myself in regards to some other issues and concerns. So we were over there late last week, and we were able to meet with Judge Bennett, Judge White, Mr. Rothgary, and Mr. Crossy in regards to their projects. IT did an in-depth analysis of their largest project, which is the recording process. I think that was like $244,000. They reviewed that to see that if it was something we could order the material and do it ourselves in-house, and the response was that this was a good price and that it would be better off to let that company do that. In the midst of that conversation, Mr. Showalter had asked if he could have a second company do an evaluation of the program. It's the same company that has done the work here at City Hall. The judges were open to that, so I know Mr. Showalter is working on that. What I can say is the cost to do that is not going to exceed the $244. That was the original quote. It could be obviously less. So we, in the discussion and going back to the mayor and the director, the idea was to appropriate the dollars. I think it was like $292,000 to help subsidize the courts in the process that they want to do to make their building safe. And it would allow us to still have dollars to deal with City Hall, which I can talk to you about that if you so desire. But that's kind of where we were at with the judges and when we left. And I think Judge Bennett will concur with this. Everybody was on the same page and everybody was comfortable with the program that they had brought forth and that our teams within the city had looked over as well.
Thank you, Mr. Berger. Is there any questions in regards to the Muni Court piece from the members of the committee or anybody who's not on the, okay. Judge Bennett, if you want to weigh in on anything more in regards to that, I mean, I know you came up and I give you the time that you need to kind of weigh in on that as well.
Just very quickly, I want to thank you. I want to weigh in with the mayor's comments. The mayor and I met last Tuesday following the Monday meeting. On Wednesday, Brian Rothgary came over and spent some time with us. We went through the courtrooms, through the specs. Then on Thursday, Kevin and Larry Showalter came in. On Friday, I spoke at length with Derek Firestein, and I spoke with Council President Stewart. So it's been a good collaborative effort to review the proposals and make sure that it was in the best interest of the city. What I want to say is I wish Washington could take a page of this. These were three branches of government that sat down and communicated. Nobody called anybody any names. Is that pretty amazing? And we just cooperated and came up with a plan that is for the best interest of Elyria and its citizens. So I appreciate the mayor, the administration, and city council. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. Any questions for the judge? No? All right, thank you, Judge. So I'm going to ask Mr. Brubaker to come back in because he did kind of segue to a piece about the city hall. I think that's kind of important to kind of give us an update on that, where things are at, what we're trying to do to get the building open, and the mayor can weigh in on it as well.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, through you to City Council and the members. First of all, the mayor, and he can talk about this in a minute. We have another meeting set up with our departments here in City Hall to talk about the next step of opening it. But I do know Councilwoman Mitchell had brought up last week about the safety of having touchless faucets and towel dispensers. A couple of weeks ago, the mayor had asked me to look into that. So even before that conversation had been brought up, and Mr. Schneider from our Building and Lands Department has taken contractors through here to look at touchless faucets, to take the air dryers out and put in touchless towel dispensers, not only just in City Hall, but over at Muni Court, because these two buildings are the buildings that will generally see the biggest pieces of general public. And then we will look at our police stations and our fire stations and other city buildings that we have, but we thought it was important to hit this building and Muni Court first. So we have that. I do have equipment. I was ready to order it last Tuesday, but I had to hold off until hopefully tomorrow. Sprayers, misters. I have two portable misters that are on wheels, and they can be pulled around, and they spray a disinfectant. We also have backpack misters where the guys or gals can put the backpacks on, and they can walk through a room and spray. It lands, it does not hurt anything, and it dries within 3 minutes. Those are the type of the items that we're going to need using the COVID money to pay employees to do that type of work for our playground equipment, our rec centers when and if they open, all of our buildings, any of our playground equipment, anything that if people are touching, playing with, or engaged with, we're going to have to utilize people to take care of that and to sanitize it. In some instances, if we open City Hall the way we expect to, it may require us every couple hours to go spray the doors outside. This morning I went through with Ryan, and we were kind of talking about how that would look and what that would look like. So we have things in place. Frankly, not to put any pressure on anybody, but with putting pressure, it's going to take passage of this piece of legislation in order for us to get that piece of the puzzle, as well as the other items of safety that we need to have for our buildings.
Ms. Mitchell.
Thank you, sir, through you. So as we're looking at the process to reopen City Hall, and thank you for considering the touchless sinks and getting rid of the air dryers. I think that's very important. But I would like to see for City Hall, plexiglass separating us. That has to be easy to do so that we can come back into council chambers and not have to sit like this.
Already one step, Mr. Chairman, through you, already one step ahead of you.
You always are.
Brett and I came in and met with Carol last Tuesday.
Okay.
And Brett got measurements and how many he needs to put screens in between each council members. He's actually working on that.
Awesome.
As well as putting one here to protect our clerk of council folks, as well as one on the other side of Ted to protect him. But we have that in play, and Mr. Schneider is building them. He actually started those last Friday.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank
that
you.
is in process, and we also have that throughout. So I know he made some for Muni Court. He's made some for multiple departments here in the city, but that's his primary thing, is to get those screens up for you folks.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Davis.
Through you, Mr. Chair. And if you have the extra money left over, is there a possibility we can get touchless free doors coming in and out to the bathroom coming in?
The answer to that is we have looked at that pricing as well, so that's already in there. That is something. I don't know if it will be in this round, depending what money we have left. Remember, we have to have this money spent by the end of the year, and the mayor can talk about this, but I know we just shared here late today that they would like us to have money uncovered by October, so it is expended, but if we get that second round of money, that is certainly something on the docket.
Thank you.
Mr. Tolet.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Are we going to utilize existing labor within the city i.e. union members, to perform these functions? That's question number one. I'll let you answer that first.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you. Yes, we're not hiring any new people. We're going to use the 6 people that we moved. If you remember back in March, we kind of consolidated Parks, Rec, cemeteries into building and lands. We're going to utilize those 6 people, as well as potentially bring 2 of our parks people / cemetery people, 2 of our laborers back to help with that project. But all of them will be current employees, and there's no intent or desire to hire additional employees because we have to be able to afford them, and we can't do that at this time.
Question number 2 then is, are we, as I understand, there's some cleaning contracts in place, I believe, with Muni Court, with an outside company right now. Are we in violation of those agreements?
Actually, Muni Court and the police department, from way back in when we had the financial crisis in 07, 08, that's when I believe, and Judge Bennett can correct me if I'm wrong on the Muni Court side, but I know on the police side, that's when we went to an outside agency. And by having our folks go over there and disinfect as needed, if needed, that does not violate our contract with them. They are there to clean. They're not, I don't believe it's part of their contract to disinfect or anything like that outside of the normal cleaning procedures.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Mrs. Mitchell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a real quick question. So as the public comes in to pay their utility bills, what does that look like? I know there's already a plexiglass up in front, but what does that look like? How will they social distance? Will they come in one door and go out another?
I will defer to the mayor on that because he had a very good idea that he shared with me last week, and I know he shared with some folks this evening, so I'll defer that to the mayor.
Yeah, thank you. And through you, Chair, before you leave today, I would love to show you kind of the idea that we're going to be sharing. So Wednesday afternoon, we are having a Zoom meeting with folks here in the building to kind of share the idea. But the idea is to use that area as a full service station, the utilities area. So if you're coming into it'll be one way in. You'll be served at that station. That'll be like the check-in. And then that's how, if you're just dropping off something, just drop it off. If you need to pay a bill, pay a bill. If you need to meet with someone, we'll call that person down and have them come get you. Or they might meet you right there at the window. So before you leave today, I would love to show you kind of what we're thinking and get your feedback on it.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry if I may just follow up with the mayor. So will people have to get their temperatures taken as they're coming in for a meeting, say, with someone?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. I think, temperature checking has been, you got to have the right thermometers. It's been sporadic. So I think part of what I've seen folks do is you have folks check in and say, hey, are you experiencing any symptoms? Have you been around anybody sick? You kind of, in the check-in process, make that a part of it. But, we talked about we have to first see what the flow is going to be. The last thing I would want to have is, some staff person sitting there all day and 2 people come in and they've been sitting there with that thermometer all day waiting for somebody to come in. So, trying to avoid that dynamic. So we want to slow open, and see how it works and see what type of flow we get. And then if we start getting a flow because something has happened and people need to get in here, that we then all right, now we might need to engage auxiliary and being in here, checking folks in. But we thought we'd start with this slow open.
Mr. Collette?
One more question. For the utilities payments, have we eliminated the use of cash yet? So it's check or credit card only. I know because of the coin shortage, a lot of things, and COVID-related issues related to currency. Have we eliminated that yet?
Well, currently, through you, Mr. Chairman, we're not, if we get cash, it's something that was mailed in or something somebody just drops off. Since City Hall's not been open, we've not got an influx of people coming in paying with cash. So to answer that question, I can say we haven't done anything with that, but we haven't had an influx of cash that we've even, and that might be, and the mayor has a thought on that.
I was just going to say through you, Chair, if you have cash, that's the beauty of this partnership. We have a drug mart. If people have cash and want to pay for cash, we've just been saying, if you go to drug mart, pay for it with cash there. If you have a card, you can do it right now over the phone. If you have a check, you can mail it to us. So that's kind of been our process.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? I call for the question. Question to call. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. So the second piece to that is now appropriating the funds to those line items. We've considered the matter of utilizing the CARES Act funding in order to authorizing the finance director to allocate monies received from the CARES Act per the attached and to amend the 2020 permanent appropriations number 2020-38 to reflect CARES Act funds to be appropriated to the departments listed as per the attached. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor? Moved by Mr. Tolet. Second by Mr. Jesse. Mr. Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you remember when we originally set up the local coronavirus relief fund, there was 5 departments, and there will still be 5. We swapped out the emergency financial assistance and added COVID-19 Muni Court. So the staffing remained the same at $560,000. The Muni Court is $290,000, $250,000. We have a miscellaneous department at $222,000, $181,000. Small business assistance of $320,000, and the community essential services at $348,000, $750,000.
Okay. So one question, I think it was kind of brought in by Mr. Tolet, and I'll ask it again because I think I've asked it in previous. I just want to make sure that we're going to have the personnel to do all what we're asking to do in regards to these cleaning of the buildings and keeping it going over there, and then able to keep on the responsibilities of what they were normally set to do. You know, I just want to make sure that there's an understanding there that I know they're going to be in there spraying the buildings and sanitizing that, and it's going to be a continuous effort once we open the building, but that they're going to be able to maintain what they're supposed to do beyond this. So, Mayor, if you want to speak to that, or Director Brubaker, if you want just to have that reassurance that it's kind of an important piece.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thought I was on vacation after that last round, so I'm sorry. Yes, we have, like I said, we have 6 personnel that are currently in the building and lands. We'd like to bring 2 more over to help with that. And the main reason that is I believe that 8 to start is where we need to be. I also understand that we have 2 individuals out at the cemetery that do very skilled work as far as when it comes to digging graves and setting headstones, and we just don't have the capability of sending anybody out there to do that. Ultimately, the goal would be in the future to cross-train our people to be able to do that. So those 2 individuals, outside of sanitizing the equipment, the tents, the chairs, the devices, everything that they would use on a normal basis for a service, will likely spend the bulk of their time doing what they normally do anyways. And adding these extra 2 employees into that, which isn't really extra 2, it's just moving 2 people, would give them the freedom to work throughout the city, bouncing around, taking care of that. We still have 2 part-timers that are not involved in this whatsoever, that are handling a lot of our grass cutting. And we'll continue to do that, which opens up the opportunity for these folks to be able to maintain and do what they have to do, as well as, you know, if they have to go over to the rec center to make a repair, they can sanitize it at the same time. So there's a lot of crossover work. But to answer the direct question, yes, I think these personnel, at least on the onset, we have enough personnel to be able to handle that and to be able to do their normal duties.
Any questions for Director Bruker in regards to that? All right. Just so they're going over, I think community essential services, Mayor, if you want to just bring us back up to speed on what those dollars will be used for.
So yeah, and I would defer to the Director of Community Development, Ashley Scott, to kind of talk about process, but we're going to manage this similar to how we manage the Community Development Block Grant, put out a request for proposals, kind of lay out the guidance for what the money is eligible for, what we're expecting and hoping to get some response to. One would be at the last meeting, to your point, Chair, you brought up around why did we have emergency financial assistance separate from this? So we agree with that. So we said, all right, that'll be a part of this as well. So hopefully we get an application from some group that's going to help people with their emergency financial situations. The other is around, we expect to see something around food. So helping people with food security during this time, helping individuals with testing. So, we're hoping to, increase testing, working with health and dentistry. And, there's going to be this technological divide that is going to be increasing. So hopefully we find someone that's going to be helping our community not get left behind, because as everything becomes more digital, we're going to need some folks out there helping people with that process so that they don't get left behind. So that's kind of what we're predicting. But, if Ms. Scott, you want to speak to just process of how we plan to get the applications, I don't know if that would be helpful. Thank you.
Through you, just to reiterate what we had discussed last week, the intent is to have this set up similar to how we did the CDBG COVID. Our department would put out a funding request and allow different organizations, agencies, et cetera, to submit an application. We would review them for completeness and for eligibility to make sure it complies with all federal, state, local laws, et cetera, and send them over to the mayor's office for review. Our department would be responsible for monitoring all of the funding and the activity with that to make sure that it is in compliance with the CARES Act. And the method of payment to the subrecipients would either be a reimbursement or on a case-by-case basis. We could look at it as an advance, depending on the situation. So that's to kind of highlight, it is mirrored exactly like we did the CDBG COVID.
Any questions for Ms. Scott? No. And then the final piece, I'll let you, the mayor, segue to it, but then Ms. Calvert, if you want to come up and speak to the small business assistance, just to kind of relay all that.
Thank you. We will be opening up the CARES Act funding for small businesses for grants of up to $50,000. We are going to be reviewing the applications. Through that process, we are requesting that the businesses describe how this funding will help them directly respond to COVID-19, how it will help them reopen or reconfigure operations to comply with public health issues. So they are going to have to provide a description for us, and then we are going to request either receipts or quotes for what those expenses are. So even though you can ask for up to $50,000, you will have to be able to document and demonstrate what the actual costs are for your business. So, and then we require very similar application items for them to submit that are similar to CDBG in nature. But again, this funding is a little bit less restrictive, and we want to make sure we take advantage of that to serve as many businesses as possible. So our last check in the process is actually our Economic Development Committee. So that committee will review, we will internally, through the administration, review all applications for completeness, forward them on to the Elyria Economic Development Committee to actually vote on approval for them. If at that time the Economic Development Committee feels that there is more documentation that is required, we will be able to request that from the business owner. One thing I did want to point out that is a little bit different in process, I think, from in the past, how we've done these types of programs, is we have set up a separate email for people to submit the applications. This is so we can really keep track of who submitted when, because this funding is going to be available on a first-come, first-served basis. So we want to avoid somebody submitting an application to me, to Ashley, to Mona, and it getting buried in our email or even in our spam. So we've set up a separate email inbox, and we are requiring people to return their applications to that inbox. So the email is covidbusiness@cityofelyria.org. And again, that's so we can really make sure that we keep it fair and orderly, because we anticipate we're going to get a lot of applications.
Any questions, Ms. Davis?
Through you, Madam Chair. So could you repeat that email once again?
Yes, the email is, let me just make sure I got it, 100% right. It is covidbusiness@cityofelyria.org. We will have this posted on our website as well, as early as tomorrow, assuming passage tonight.
Any other questions? Just be mindful that, you know, these appropriations, even though there's the money that we can, if things are in need, we feel we need to shift some of these dollars, we can't appropriate to a different line item. We feel they're not being used to there. So just so that everyone understands that. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Baird?
Yeah, I forget, or maybe I didn't know. Does this have an expiration on it as well? You have to spend it by a certain time like these others?
Yes, this money, just like all the other CARES Act funding, needs to be spent by December 30th.
31st. Oh.
Okay.
That's how many days there are in December.
Right.
I do think the deadline is the 30th. Just to clarify, we need to clarify that, but just so you know.
Right. Is there any further discussion? Call for the question? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Okay, as soon as that is signed, we'll give us a couple minutes to kind of get reset up for the full council meeting, and we'll pass the two pieces of legislation. No, you're good. You're good. Okay, Corey, I think we're going to be ready. Good, Judge. I'll be in touch. Okay, we're going to start the full council meeting.
Are you talking about the?
Okay, at this time, I'd like to stand up for a moment of reflective silence in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Simmons, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, we're hereby noticed to have in accordance with Section 3.210 of the Charter of the City of Elyria, Ohio, the special virtual meeting of City Council has been called for Monday, August the 10th, 2020 at 7 p.m. This special meeting has been called to consider the following. Mr. Clerk?
Mr. President, we're going to do the attendance first.
Excuse me? Oh, Ms. Dennis?
Yes, sir.
Stand corrected.
Okay. Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Sierra.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Baird.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell. Here. Mr. Tolet. Here. Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Keys. Mr. Jesse.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mrs. Keys is absent. She has an excuse here.
Can I get a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Moved by Mr. Baird. Second. Second by Mr. Sierra. Any discussion?
Question.
Question been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
All right, we have an ordinance authorizing the use of the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security CARES Act funding to cover costs incurred due to the COVID-19 public health emergency of the City of Elyria and declared an emergency.
Ms. Davis?
Mr. Chair, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading of suspension of rules and declare an emergency.
Second. Second by Mr. Jesse. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2020-98.
Mr. Tolet?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to amend the appropriations. Excuse me.
I need to read it first. I'm sorry. This is the second piece of the legislation. And then we'll have Mr. Tolet make the motion, okay? You good? Yep.
An ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-38, known as the 2020 Permanent Appropriations Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Mr. Tolet?
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
2020-99.
And that is
No
all.
further business, Mr. Chairman. Move we adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Baird, second by Mr. Sayre. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Means adjourned.
Again, if you want to meet me by the utilities whenever you get a chance, I'm gonna be down there waiting. By the utilities.